Hello friends, welcome back to Study 247. Hope you all are doing good. Today we will discuss an important topic, which is what does designation as a state sponsor of terrorism by the US mean? So, first of all, why it is trending in news? Recently, Ukraine has requested US to designate Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. The designation would activate perhaps the harshest suite of sanctions available with the US against Russia. Now let's understand what actually state sponsors of terrorism is. The US Secretary of State, the minister primarily in charge of foreign relations, has the power to designate countries that have repeatedly provided support for acts of international terrorism as state sponsors of terrorism. The US can place 4 categories of sanctions on countries that are on this list. Restrictions on US foreign assistance. A ban on defense exports and sales. Certain controls over exports of dual-use items. Miscellaneous financial and other restrictions. As of now, there are 4 countries on the list of state sponsors of terrorism. First, Syria, designated on 29 December 1979. Second, Iran, designated on 19 January 1984. Third, North Korea, designated on 20 November 2017. Fourth, Cuba was redesignated as a state sponsor of terrorism on 12 January 2021. Now, what has been India's stand on Russia-Ukraine conflict? Initially, India abstained on a sponsored United Nations Security Council (UNSC) resolution that deplores in the strongest terms Russia's aggression against Ukraine. India again abstained from voting at the UNSC on the Russia-drafted resolution on the humanitarian situation in Ukraine, which demanded that calling for a negotiated ceasefire for enabling safe, rapid, voluntary and unhindered evacuation of civilians. Unlike during the past abstentions relating to Ukraine, it was the first time that India sided with the West in this conflict, even if by an abstention. India also abstained from the International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) resolution that was related to safety at 4 nuclear power stations and a number of nuclear waste sites including Chernobyl, as the Russians seized control of them. Russia's attack on Ukraine, although a gross violation of international law, is not terrorism for the purposes of this designation, but Russia has provided plenty of other grounds in the past decade. To designate a country as a state sponsor of terrorism, the Secretary of State must determine that the nation's government has repeatedly provided support for acts of international terrorism, such as assassinations or financing terrorist groups. Now, what about India's relations with Russia? India has good ties with both the countries. If the tension between the two USA and Russia escalates, it is important for India to rationally balance the relationships. India's relations with Russia are not as multifaceted as India's ties with the US, Europe, or even Japan. They are focused primarily on energy and defense. India-Russia bilateral trade stands at only $11 billion, but Indian purchases of Russian military equipment are its most significant element. For more such trending topics highlights, please subscribe to Study 247. That's all for today. Thank you.